welcome everybody. Let's talk real estate. Your weekly BS with Barry Saywitz about the current commercial real estate market here in Southern California. As we take a no BS look at both sides of the issues driving this market today to find the best solutions going forward. With our man right in the middle, it's Barry Saywitz. Hey, Barry.
Hey, good morning, Paul, and good morning to all of our viewers and our listeners out there. If it's Tuesday, which it is, we're talking real estate. I'm Barry Saywitz, president of the Saywitz Company and managing partner of Saywitz Properties, and I want to welcome everybody back here again today. I want to do a quick shout-out since we are rapidly approaching the Thanksgiving holiday and wish everybody out there a happy Thanksgiving, a healthy and prosperous coming new year. I also want to wish a speedy recovery to my mother, who is recovering from knee surgery, so hopefully she's up and about and less cranky in the near future. I'm excited about today's show because of many reasons. Number one, we have an exciting guest who has done a lot of different things relative to the commercial real estate world here in Orange County and elsewhere around the country. Number two, we'll talk apartments, we'll talk office, we'll talk about what the future holds for the economy, and especially here in Southern California. I want to welcome our guest, Rand Sperry, CEO and co-founder of Sperry Commercial, Sperry Equities, and the many other Sperry entities that are out there in the world. So welcome.
Thanks, Barry. Great to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on. And so we are getting towards the tail end of the year here. And I think, we were talking about it earlier. Guests that we had at the beginning of the year were all rosy and talking good things, and the future looked super bright. And I don't want to be Debbie Downer by any means, but certainly we are in a different environment today as we look forward into the new year. But you yourself are a longtime resident and businessman in Orange County and have seen certainly a lot of ups and downs in the markets. I want to rewind and then we'll fast forward back in today's world. But sure. So you got going in the late 80s, boom time everywhere, boom time Orange County, big parties, big deals, all kinds of fun stuff. That's when I got started, and I long for those days again. And started basically your own commercial brokerage shop here in Orange County.
Right. I actually started in 1975 with my first fourplex. I was 20 years old. So now everyone knows how old I am. And then spent about 10 years with a company called the Bruce Haynes Company. I don't know if you remember Bruce Haynes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he specialized in apartment buildings. So I learned the apartment business through that organization, rose to the top of the organization. I was the executive VP and general sales manager of the company. And then him and I didn't see eye to eye in terms of expanding and growing the company nationally. And he liked what he had, which right. I don't blame him. Sometimes smaller is better.
Yeah.
So I met Mark Van Ness, and we started a company called Sperry Van Ness in 1987. Moved to Orange County. I was in the San Gabriel Valley, and previous to that, Beverly Hills and Woodland Hills.
And so why Orange County then?
Well, I found this girl from Orange County.
There's always a girl.
Yeah, there's always a girl. So Rosemary's her name, and she loved Orange County, even though when we first got married, we lived in San Marino. Talked me into coming here. And I used to come here for the beach. Huntington Beach was my hangout growing up.
And there were orange groves then.
Yeah, there were.
There was actually oranges.
In fact, from Monterey Park, where I grew up, we had to take Whittier Boulevard, and then we'd take Beach Boulevard. There wasn't a freeway.
Right, and the 55 didn't go to the beach. You had to take the side streets and Newport Boulevard and all that stuff. So.
Yeah, so...
And so you get here, and so it was a few years before my time. I got here 1989. I started in commercial real estate in October of 1989. The real estate market crashed in November of 1989. So I had a week or two under my belt before it completely tanked.
Yeah.
But you were here while it's still booming, right?
Yes, moved here in 1985, and we had two or three great years. That's when we opened up Sperry Van Ness, and it boomed for about a year, and then we had a major earthquake, as I recall, and then the stock market the next year. And we would look at each other, Mark and I, and go, is this an omen?
Yeah.
I mean, we start this company and two horrible things happen within 24 months. And it really affected the business at the time. We would find out that later things would make that look like a walk in the park.
Oh, I'm sure, especially if you look back at COVID and other things, you get past it pretty quick. But at that time, it was really brokerage, right? You were attracting other brokerage under your brokerage umbrella, and I remember it was became one of the larger brokerage companies in Orange County, and then expanding outward, right?
Yep. I think number 10 in the country by 2008 or so. And I think now that individual company is probably number 7 as I looked at its rankings. And then I left, though. Mark Van Ness and I split up in 2013, so I'm no longer affiliated with Sperry Van Ness, but then started my own franchise after the non-compete, and now we're in about 25 states with 62 offices.
And again, brokerage?
Brokerage, yes.
Primarily brokerage.
Yes.
But this time it's the franchise concept as
Correct.
opposed to you own it all and you're directly everybody's boss, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And how is that model, A, different than just owning it yourself from a business perspective, and then B, how does that work? Is it a better model than trying to herd all the cats in the brokerage business? Because I know how that goes. It's difficult stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's certainly from a management standpoint, it's a much better model, and even from a risk standpoint, because you don't have the overhead, as you know, running just one office between a manager. You know, you're running $100,000 a month in overhead very easily with each office, and in times like this, that could get dicey because, you know, just talking to a few people, and we still have our brokerage operation that we own in Orange County. Deals, we had 4 deals slated to be listed, apartment deals, this last quarter, and all the buyers decided to pull them off the market. They didn't like the cap rates creeping up, so they just decided to keep
they didn't
them.
like what you were telling them, and they're stuck on yesterday's dollar, right?
It's another wait. We'll wait and see what happens.
Yeah.
And so that gets dangerous, or you get nervous when you have a lot of offices like that and you're covering the overhead. So
in
franchise
this
model's great.
So in this model, franchisee, they have their own business,
Right.
They have their own corporation. They run it. They pay their bills. It's not your problem. But they are under what I'm going to call the umbrella of the Sperry umbrella, right?
Yeah,
and you're
exactly.
providing buying power. You're providing technology. You're providing a national platform for them to be able to do business outside their own local market. True?
Boy, you've got the elevator pitch down.
Well,
yes.
I'll tell you why, because we didn't talk about was in the 90s, I actually started a national brokerage company with the same thing, except that I was not as smart as you, and I decided that we were going to go around the country and we were going to get independent brokerage companies to unite under a common umbrella. And I created a company called the Core Network, where I would get up at 5 in the morning, call guys on the East Coast, convince them to join our idea. And the pitch was that we had set up the organization, which was a 501c3 nonprofit, similar to the NFL, where all the teams make money, but the umbrella is really not for profit, because otherwise people would think you were trying to buy them out or control them. And so we went around market by market and built an organization of 100 different firms within a period of only a handful of years. So I know the drill, except I didn't make a nickel from it at the end of the day of the platform. We used it as an expansion for our own business, which is, I'm going to guess, your pitch, right? That is your pitch.
Yeah.
And I'm going to assume it's working well. Number one, that you've got offices around the country, and number two, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Talk about expansion of the business. What it did help us do as well is acquire property, because that's where Sperry Equities comes in, is that we found properties we're like in 9 different states. I would never do that if I was just a local Orange County firm. But because we have offices and relationships with brokers, we were comfortable buying in those markets. And so that's helped us really grow the equities division.
Yeah, and you have people basically scouting deals that know the local marketplace, so you don't hopefully make a mistake buying in the wrong part of town or a different property. And you have somebody there to keep an eye on it for you, so you don't have to go flying around to check on it yourself.
Yeah.
And for them, they have access to capital.
Yep. Yeah.
No, I like it, and it seems to be working well. And so then, is the capital entity different than the equities entity, different than the brokerage entity? Like, I thought there was 3. I get confused.
Well, we have a capital markets one. They're out of New York, a relationship between myself and a gentleman named Sam Suzuki and his team. And they've been in it for years, and he loved what Sperry Commercial was doing out in the marketplace and said, I want to join you guys. And so we've got a partnership, and he's out doing both debt and equity.
Gotcha.
I haven't talked to him in the last month, so it's crazy. Normally I don't need to, but I'm curious how things have slowed down in that market, and probably before I got on the show I should have gave him a call.
I'm going to guess it's a little bit slower than it was before, just based on what everybody else is saying.
Yeah.
And so back to Orange County for a second. So you watch Orange County grow up, as I call it, right? I mean, there's buildings getting built, there's people moving here from other places. and we get past the downturn of the late 80s and the early 90s, and you guys keep going. There's still deals to be made, focusing on the brokerage, and a large part of that on the multifamily side, right?
Yeah.
Which to me seems like it was a niche, because you had bigger companies like CBRE or Lee and Associates or Voight that were also really very large brokerage companies at the time, but mostly focusing on office and a little bit of industrial. Nobody was really tackling the apartment market other than you guys and Marcus and Millichap.
That's it. We were the two big games in town.
Yeah, and still.
Yeah.
So on the apartment side of things, it's funny because you got started with a fourplex. I got started with a duplex. Right. So one duplex became 2, became 20, became 10 units, 20 units, 40 units.
Right.
That's sort of how it goes. That aspect of the market at the time, I remember when I bought my first place at the beach in Newport, the people were paying like $500 a month in rent. And today I think those things rent for, in the thousands for sure.
Yeah. I'm just amazed, I was just looking at the rents, and just forget the beach, just kind of inland. B product was going for $400 for a one bedroom, and we're renting one bedrooms at $1,995, basically $2,000 a month. Now, during that process, we've had to renovate the units.
Of course.
So I would say their B product renovated units, you're at that number. If it's new product, it's another $400 more a month, $400 to $500 a month, $2,500.
Yeah.
And I guess if you asked me 20 or 30 years ago, I would have thought you're out of your mind.
Crazy.
That rents would get that high. And look at cost per unit. I mean, we just had a deal trade in Anaheim for $416,000 a door.
I looked at one in Costa Mesa for $616,000 a door.
Was it? Well,
it's a couple
Costa
doors
Mesa
down from something that I own, and I was just like, how does that pencil? Right.
I'm building a project right now, 63 units, 6,000 retail with 63 above in Koreatown. And, we're projecting 25, well, depending on the unit, because some of them are going to have fabulous views of Los Angeles downtown. But, yeah, I mean, nothing's under $2,000 a month, $2,200. And when I looked at the comps before we started to build it, this is 2 years ago, the comps were at $550 a door. And as you know, they were making fun of Mayor Garcetti for spending $725,000 a door for units, and I'll make fun of him too. That's I don't know what he was doing, but we're going to be in ours about $550 a door when we get done. So hopefully the market's pushed up from, I think it's actually $480 a door right now, and of course that's because of COVID. And the price of everything in construction has gone up dramatically. It's kind of come down. Like, for example, lumber was triple what it was before it started to rise. Now it's only
double or 2.5, right? Feel good about that.
I mean, you start feeling good about that. It's like, gas gets to $6.85 a gallon and it drops down to $5.25, and you go, yahoo!
I saw $4.99. I got excited until I got closer, and it was actually a $5, and I just didn't read it properly. But yeah, it's all relative, right? I mean, so you look at the cost of housing, and in Los Angeles in particular, because it's so expensive in Los Angeles that it then, to me, trickles into Orange County, Riverside County, and other areas, because it drives the market up, because you have people coming out of Los Angeles that to them it looks cheap at $300,000 or $400,000 a door when it's $500,000 or $600,000 a door there. And if a one bedroom in LA is $2,500 or $3,000, then $2,000 looks like it's not that expensive. Mm-hmm. No different than people leaving California, going to Arizona and Nevada and buying up stuff and running up the prices there. I guess the question I'd have for you is it sustainable, right? And is it sustainable in the sense that if you have continued inflation and the cost of living for the average person continues to go up, at what point do they go, hey, I really just can't afford this, or I'm going to have to go do something else? And do they even have any options in today's environment?
Well, there are options, but before I answer that, I'm going to go back to the question about is it sustainable? Because all I can think of is when rents hit $1,000 a month, and somebody asked me, how can they afford this? How much more can they go up? So I'm going to answer that and say I've figured out after 47 years that not only is it sustainable, but we'll be looking at $2,000 a unit as a bargain in
down
10
the road.
years.
Right.
But for right now, what can happen, and we saw this happen before, and that is that if you can't afford it, you go back and live with mom and dad. Okay.
Or you go from a 2-bedroom to a 1-bedroom, or you go further from your job, or whatever you got to do.
Yeah, or you double up.
Yeah.
Remember the doubling up? And right now, that might be where we see people. So rents will probably sustain themselves in some of the markets because people will double up to afford it because they don't want to move back home with mom and dad.
Yeah.
But there are going to be certain pockets where people are going to go back home.
Right, and for people who just can't afford it because they're either in a work industry that doesn't have steady income or whatever the reason being, we're starting to see that on our end where we worked with people as best we could during COVID, and now as you come out and things get more difficult as a landlord on your own cost model, that it's just hard to allow people to continue to carry a balance and trickle pay, and at some point you got to look in the mirror and say, hey, maybe this is not for me.
Yeah.
And then the question becomes, is that a small percentage or does that start to become a bigger one? The difficulty is if you go out and look for another place to rent, there's not much out there.
Yeah, that's the thing, is the supply is short. And the interesting thing is it's due to COVID and due to interest rates now, I think it's only going to get worse. You know, the big issue was housing. Okay, so what do we do from a government standpoint is we spike the rates.
Right.
Now, to some degree, that is really slowing down not only housing. Well, when I say housing, multi-residential is what I'm talking about. I mean, if you're looking to build an apartment building or build for rent at the moment, those rates can scare you as you go into a construction loan, and then you're not going to know what your long-term takeout loan is. I mean, what's happened between just from June to now? Prime's gone from 4.75 to 7%. There's been 6 rate hikes.
With more potentially to come?
We're talking about a half a point. I mean, I don't know how much you want to bet your first duplex on the fact that it's going up a half a point in December. Guaranteed.
Yeah.
And we'll probably see another hike in January. And the problem is that the rates can't go up quick enough to fight off inflation. So it's kind of like we're going to overstep, I think, on the interest rates, which I don't understand. These guys are supposed to be, Jerome Powell should be smarter than you and I, but, you know, you continue to raise these rates. Why don't you let it cook for a while and see what happens? Instead of just going crazy with the rates and turning everyone upside down and wondering, what do we do next? Should we build that project? Are rates going to come down? So by the time the project's done, we'll settle back with a decent rate. Maybe a decent rate will be 4.5% to 5%. That would probably be exciting to have again.
But you'll be at 7, right?
Right now.
You're going to be very quickly, I think, after the first of the year, you're going to be in the 7s. And then if you compare that on the housing market, for somebody who was looking at a 3 or a 2.5 not very long ago, right? The cost of that mortgage payment for that particular individual or family has more than doubled. And so for the average person out there, it just takes that much of the market out of the market, and those people go back to renting. Yeah.
There's arguments for how we'll have less demand for rentals and arguments for we're going to have more.
Right.
So, and it probably will equalize out to some degree, but I think as far as owners of multi-res right now, I wouldn't, you know, here I am with a brokerage company, but for 2023, I don't know that it makes sense to sell anything or to buy anything. I mean, I think we're going to have a pretty stale market or slow market here in 2023 because sellers are going to say, well, I'll sell it if I can get my 3.25 cap.
But they're not going to get it.
Yeah. And the buyer's going to go, I'm not going to give it to you. So, and the
broker says, I'll try, right?
Yeah.
What the heck?
So we'll list it and we'll beat our head against the wall, and then we won't be able to sell it. And it'll be kind of a wait and see in that regard. And it's one of those tough markets. But there'll be people that will have to sell because if they've got a loan that now has come due and the LTVs are under, loan to values are under 50%, they may have trouble refinancing to replace their loan amount. So I see that as a big issue here in 2023, and it's like, okay, if I can't do it, then I might as well just sell the property,
just get out,
and get out.
What I can. And the truth of it is, even if I can't get my 3.5 cap that I could have in yesterday's world, whatever you're doing, usually you're making money, right? You're not to the pain of the last recession where people were actually just losing all their equity. You're not there yet. And so the other side of it, too, is that in today's world, if I'm a small multifamily owner and I bought a property or two, I think I'm pretty smart. I could just hold up my hand and rent the unit. I could put, lipstick on it, make it a little nicer, and it'll rent, and I can get a good number. But when the market starts to cool or when people start to either struggle to pay or you need to actually have some depth to your own reserves, it becomes a little more challenging.
Yeah.
And so I think all of those things will start to, for lack of a better word, fester over the course of the next 12 months.
So far, what has seemed to save the day, in my opinion, and why even though I have a degree in finance and I heard, that 2 quarters in a row of negative GDP, you're in a recession, one of the things that's different this time is that unemployment is so low, and that if you want a job, you can get a job. Now, layoffs are looming, especially in the tech business, but outside of that, I'm not seeing or hearing, maybe you are, Barry, of major layoffs in core business. So
I think it's coming. I think, we're starting to see the people that have side jobs and the people that have second jobs and the people that have, I'm going to call it under the table or independent contractor jobs. That's going to start to slow down, and those people are going to start to feel the pinch. But you're right. I mean, if you need to get a job, if you want to get a job, there's a lot of places still hiring, and especially with the holidays coming up, people need seasonal help, so you should be able to get some extra money. It'll be interesting to see. One of the things I'm curious about is how the retail numbers look and what spending looks like for this holiday season, whether people just don't care and they just go spend money on holidays and presents and whatever it is that they're doing, or whether they actually start to pull back and what those numbers look like.
Yeah, I don't think they've seen a negative decline in consumer spending yet.
No.
So you got low unemployment and consumer spending, two things that in a recession are negative, or unemployment's up and consumer spending is negative. And so it's interesting. And if, I did an analysis in my head because I just had a meeting on a budget meeting on an apartment building on Friday, and I'm thinking, okay, we're getting $2,000 for 1 bedrooms and $2,400 for 2 bedrooms. And I'm going, but, I pay our receptionist probably $50,000 a year, right?
Yeah.
So let's say you just had a receptionist and somebody else, another receptionist, and they live together. That's $100,000 between the two of them.
They can afford it.
They can afford it.
But that same receptionist who's in a 1-bedroom by herself, who is a single mom or has some other financial obligations or student debt that they're not going to just give to her for free, then that may be a struggle. And I guess that will be the interesting thing to see as to how that works. And then as rents go up, what we've seen is people go look around and we tell them, listen, we're going to renew your lease. If you're an existing tenant, we're not going to charge you the same as somebody off the street. Yeah. But at the same time, your rent is going up. And then when you go to look around, you should figure out it's actually a pretty good deal. Whether you can afford it or not is a different ball game. And I guess that's what we'll find out coming up in the next year. Yeah,
that was our comment. It's like, well, where are they going to go? We're the best game in town, and it's just going to cost them a bunch of money to move.
Right. So well, look, we've only got a couple of minutes left. You and I could go at this all day. I think we'll probably have to have you come back after the first of the year and see how it starts to go, and we'll do a recap. And we didn't even get to some of the other fun stuff I wanted to talk to you about. But
I just want to make a comment about, we talk about these cap rates on apartment buildings and how we get used to 3.25. I don't know, Barry. I still pinch myself when I think about, how did that happen? How did we get so low? Yeah. I mean, when I got in the business, they were 7 and 8, 9 caps. So.
Right, and then all of a sudden it started to go to 5 at the coast, and then you'd go inland and you could still find 6 or 7. We used to have investors come into our office on the brokerage side and say, well, I want a 7 or an 8 cap. And I said, not in California, you don't. If you go to Mississippi, you can go there. I'm sorry, I'll give you a name of a number of a guy. But, I mean, it's crazy also to think that a property would trade at a 3 or 4 cap when interest rates are in the 6s going to 7s, because to me that dog doesn't hunt either, right? You're buying for either long-term growth and appreciation, but you're guaranteeing yourself negative cash flow at the gate.
Well, you just described it. That is the investment. And when you look at growing a business, oftentimes you're losing money. Starbucks lost money. They almost had to close their doors, though. They were down $17 million way back in the day before they turned Starbucks around, okay? And a lot of businesses are that way. Apartments are that way. You don't buy an apartment and come out the door, and we haven't, even with low interest rates, with 5 and 6% cash-on-cash returns day one. The key to making money in apartments, and so I'm going to leave this with a positive vibe on apartments, is that if you buy for long-term, you're in your 30s or even 40s, and you're looking for retirement, and you buy that building today, 25 years from now, when you're our age or my age, you're going to find that you did the right thing. And in fact, Barry and you and I were talking before we went on air here about the old days and how we shouldn't have sold our apartment buildings and how much they've doubled and tripled in value in 25 years.
Yeah.
And the key is, really, if I could leave any advice to anyone that wants to own an apartment building, is tough through it and keep it.
Yeah,
don't sell it.
Don't sell it.
Because the rents will get you through, because you'll be surprised where they'll be in 25 years.
And the model of buying it, flipping it, making a bunch of money, and continue to grow it, that window has passed, at least for the moment.
Absolutely.
So the barrier to entry in the multifamily market anywhere, but especially here in Southern California, is very difficult. So if you can get in, then, like you say, get in, keep your property nice, get good tenants that appreciate the property and vice versa, and then you'll have a very good asset at the end of the day. I mean, I think Orange County long-term is a viable, vibrant, active, diverse place for people to live and work. And it's
great
not
place
change.
to invest.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, well, with that said, more good things to come. I appreciate you coming on the show, and much success to you and your family and your businesses. And we'll certainly have you come back and take a look at this again down the road, and we'll take a look back and see what's changed. But best wishes for happy holidays. And
same to
good
you.
Having you here. Thanks. So, with that said, I am Barry Saywitz, president of the Saywitz Company. And if it's one thing that I've learned in my 30-plus years of doing this, it's to look at both sides of the equation and try and surround yourself with good information and good people to give you good advice, and hopefully we've done that here today and given you a couple of tips. And if it's Tuesday, we will see you back here next week on more Let's Talk Real Estate. I want to thank everybody here at OC Talk Radio on putting the show together, and thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you back soon. Thanks.
There you have it. You've been listening to Let's Talk Real Estate, your weekly BS with Barry Saywitz about the current state of the real commercial real estate market right here in Southern California. On Orange County's only community radio station, OC Talk Radio, streaming live from our studio here at the University of California Irvine's Beale Applied Innovation Center.